By defying the traditional role of women in the 1930s, Nancy Walton, at just 19, became the youngest Australian woman to be a licensed pilot. Nancy Walton was born in Kew, New South Wales, Australia on the 16th of October 1915. As if by knowing her own destiny, Nancy Walton wanted to fly before she could even pronounce the word aeroplane. As a teenager, Nancy had to leave school early to support her family because of the Depression in Australia. Nancy Walton got her first taste of flying when she was just 13 after paying for a joy flight which cost her 10 shillings. This flight ignited Nancy's passion for flying, and her passion would only grow stronger. In 1933, at age 18, Nancy Walton heard that Sir Charles Kingsford Smith, who was the first man to fly across the Australian mainland non-stop, was opening a flying school in Mascot. Nancy then informed him that she intended to become one of his students, and although her father didn't approve of his daughter's actions, he still allowed her to go. Nancy's first flying achievement throughout her life was gaining her pilot's license at age 19. This then made her the youngest Australian woman to gain a pilot's license. The first plane she owned and learned to fly was a type of plane called a gypsy moth. Shortly after obtaining her commercial license, Nancy Walton and her friend Peggy McKillop took off on their own tour of Australia, dropping into towns and giving joyrides to people who had never seen a plane before. They charged 10 shillings for a ride, the same amount Nancy paid for her very first flight. Whilst touring, Nancy Walton was approached by Reverend Stanley Drummond, who was from the Far West Children's Health Scheme. He hired her to help set up a flying medical service in the outback Australia, where her plane would be used as an air ambulance. This resulted in her upgrading her plane to a Leopard Moth, which cost £1,800. Nancy would often say that this job was rewarding but often very lonely work. In 1950, Nancy Walton founded the AWPA, or Australian Women's Pilots Association, where she was president for 5 years. Nancy Walton became patron of the AWPA in 1983, following the death of Lady Casey, the regional patron. In 1958, she decided to return to flying after a 20-year absence. Also, in her later years, Nancy published autobiographies such as Born to Fly in 1961 and My God, It's a Woman in 1990. Nancy Walton was also awarded the Order of the British Empire in 1966 and the Order of Australia in 1990, as well as having Qantas's new Airbus named after her. Sadly, Nancy Walton died on the 13th of January 2009, aged 93. The two most significant contributions to Australian history from Nancy Walton was her contribution to aviation and the way she used her skills as a pilot to support those in need. Most pilots would spend their whole lives trying to break records, but Nancy, still in her 20s, decided to help save the lives of many Australians, which was nowhere near as enjoyable as competing in and winning races. What also made her significant was that, at the beginning, she had no support from her family, especially her father. Although not long after obtaining her pilot's license, her father's pride in his daughter caused him to change his mind and place his full support in her. Nancy Walton also changed the way Australia now views women as a role for pilot. Because of her years of presence and experience as a pilot, it changed the future of women. Women are now enrolled in Australian Air Force and Navy and also working as airline captains and other various pilot roles. And finally, the AWPA Association, which Nancy Walton created, is still operational today, and continues to inspire women across Australia to earn their pilot's license and do volunteer work for the help of others.